Um, Today, we're going to talk about mentorships and essentially from both ends, a little bit on the kind of mentee side with some tips and tricks and advice, and also from the mentorship side. So, whether you are trying to get into mentoring as a mentor or whether you are a mentee seeking for a mentor, hopefully, this talk or this roundtable conversation will give you some really, really good tips and advice to take away from. I'll be your host today, so strap in and enjoy the flight. And with me are, I hope it's all the same screens, but we'll see. To my whatever that is in the virtual space, right? This is going to be terrible because it's the wrong side. Lewis Thompson from Soundcuts, mentor of many, I would just say in general.
Everyone, I'm on your left. I think it's always different for everyone. But hi, that's me he was talking about. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Then we've got underneath me, or maybe not, John Kelliher from No Breaks Games. Also, yeah, you can go on.
Hi, I'm John. We can pass on. And then we've got Presley Hynes.
Exactly. From Brass Lion Entertainment. And yeah, together, the four of us will be chatting about mentorships. So I'd love to just kind of start with Lewis, if you could maybe give us a little bit of a kind of rough rundown of what a mentorship actually means. So we have a little bit of a baseline to go off from.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, yes, thank you for having me, Greg. Yes, so I love mentoring people. I'm really, really into it. And I always say whenever I start like a mentorship with someone, because I've done it quite a lot now, I always try to specify like, it's called a mentorship because it's kind of a nice way to put it. But like, I don't really personally see it as like, oh, I'm a mentor. You must follow my teachings and do as I say. I really do kind of look at it as kind of like, I'm another person that is into the same hobby as you, and maybe I'm just a bit further on the journey just because I've started a bit earlier or something like that. So I really try to think of it just like chatting to friends. And whenever I mentor someone, in air quotes, it's basically just like we'll do a video call for an hour or so. I normally kind of chat to kind of beginners because I'm also fairly new in the industry myself. So I kind of chat to people trying to break into the industry. If they're working on a show reel, I'll give them some feedback. We'll go through it together. They can kind of come back to me, etc. Or if I just like don't know where to start because it's really difficult getting into game audio. I find so many things that can go wrong and to learn and so much stuff to it. It's really overwhelming. I just try to kind of let people know what I did and what I recommend for people. Sometimes I'm sure it's wrong information and I try to let them know it's just my opinion and I'm just trying to help. And I'm sure that other mentors would say different things to me, but I was just kind of like, just chatting with people, making friends with people and just trying to give them a bit of advice that I had when I was starting out, which I found invaluable. But that's me. Do you want to pass the question on to someone else as well, or are you moving on, Greg?
Yeah, no, I would love to, definitely. Presley, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, it's basically the same for me. This is my 5th year in the industry, so I'm certainly not like super senior or anything. But something that helped me a lot when I was starting out was just having a network of people available that I could just ask all the questions to and try to figure out, what I can be doing better to better my odds of getting a job in the industry and do better once I'm in it, right? So, a lot of the whole being a mentor for me is trying to just sort of pay it forward to other people that are up and coming and trying to do what they can, or juniors or mid-levels that are even close to where I am, right, that might have a different area of expertise, and learning from each other as well, right? So yeah, it's kind of where I'm at.
Love it. I also love the paying it forward. What a great term. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting. When I was like starting out in the industry, I think it was like 7 years ago, I was kind of like looking for this mentor thing. And I think the game audio community wasn't what it is today. I think it was still quite solid, but like what we have now is special. I have artist friends who are like I wish our community was like even half as wholesome as the game audio community and stuff. So what we have here is like really special. And I think that the fact that things like game audio learning exists, and like a bunch of the resources that like Presley's put together and a bunch of other people, is so invaluable to everyone. But the thing that I learned is that like I thought that like getting a mentor was like a set thing, that there was like a set way to have a mentor. And what I would actually say the reality is that like there is no such thing as like the stereotypical mentor that like you know, it's kind of like a therapist in a sense, where it's like you kind of just have to feel what's right for you. And whether that's like Presley said, like if it's just like an hour-long talk with someone who's at a similar level to you, that kind of still counts as mentorship. Like you don't need to be the best person in the industry to be able to mentor someone. You could basically just know that telling someone, you know, that you should go to this event, that's like good advice. So I'd say, yeah, there's no like one size fits all for any of this. So yeah, really happy to be here. Really happy to chat about this stuff. Back to you, Greg.
Totally agree. It's also interesting because there's a thing, this term called reverse mentorship, I believe as well, which is kind of where, which I guess I experienced to a certain degree in my first job, where I was super out of my depth, but my boss was like really, 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 really far in the industry and had kind of like stopped playing any games and all these kinds of things. And so it was a dual learning, kind of like I learned from him, he learned from me. And I think that's also something that is really valuable to just acknowledge, is that like even coming in as a junior, you might have something to offer to people who have very, very senior status in the industry. But I would also love to know just how did you get into being a mentor? Lewis, let's start off with you again, maybe.
Yeah, I pretty early on, I always wanted to, like someone said earlier, like it's all about paying it forward. And as soon as like I couldn't have got into the game audio industry without people helping me in pubs. I didn't really have a mentor per se, but just like people's advice and like generosity like helped me so much, and I always wanted to give back to them. And I was always looking like, even like from like the first year, and I was like, I want to help someone get the same thing, because I want to pay it forward, I want to give back. But I never felt, you know, I've only been in the industry 1 year. Like I never could find anything that it never felt right to be telling people what to do. But I was always scouting the internet for like mentorship programs to get involved with. And I ended up getting into, the first one I did was, I believe it's called the Story Singer and Co mentorship program on Twitter. It runs like once a year or something. And I thought, you know what, screw it, it's time. It's been like a couple of years. I'm going to do it. And who knows, it might be terrible. And I did it, and I waited, and I started chatting to the first kind of few people that I met from it, and I just loved it. Like I chatted to one or two people, really enjoyed getting to know them, and from there I was scouring the net for any more mentorship opportunities. And so I also applied for Intergames, have a mentorship program, Limit Break as well. This is probably I don't want to say my favorite one, but like I really support Limit Break. I think it's great what they're doing, and then I've been put it on my website, like offering mentorships to anyone all the time. And then likewise, I went onto your website as well, Greg, on Game Audio Learning, and I just went mentoring mad, to be honest. I just love chatting to people and helping people out. And yeah, even though I was new when I started, I think like you said, like even just being in the industry like a couple of years, it's enough to help some people who are in the same shoes I was 2 years ago. I can't mentor someone who's, you know, when I do mentoring, I can't tell anyone advanced audio programming techniques or implementation stuff, but just like little things like, you know, how to put a show together or how to put your website together, I felt like I could help people with, and I loved that. And yeah, that's just what I started with doing. Maybe in the future I can do some more advanced mentoring, but until then I just tell people how the show will sound.
I'll definitely shoot you an email for some audio programming mentoring. How about you, Presley?
There's the mute button. I found it. Yeah, so when I was still in university thinking I was going to go into music, I started thinking about sound design, mostly because of like the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes videos, which I think a lot of people have started with, and that's kind of where they went, oh, sound design is a thing, that's cool. And I randomly emailed somebody that worked on some of the Marvel movies. And I was like, what is this as a job? And what do I need to know about it? And he wrote me a novel of an email back that just like immediately I was like, okay, cool. There it is. This is what I want to do. No, there was no questioning after I got that email back from him. And once I got far enough that like I was in the industry and I was doing things, I was like, I want to be able to do that for other people if I can, because of how much it influenced me. And, you know, university education and post-secondary education in general is so expensive and so out of reach for so many people that if I can even do a little bit to help people get somewhere, I will be happy. And whatever that means, you know, I will try my best to do that. I don't claim to be like a major expert in anything necessarily. I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I'll be honest about that too, right? So for me, the reason I got into mentoring is because I know how much it helped me. And I kind of just started by like joining / co-owning the sound design Discord. And people just started asking so many questions on there about game audio and sound design techniques and stuff like that. And I was answering it so consistently on there that I was like, okay, I might as well just open up my email and say, like, if you want to email me about things, feel free. You know, if I can even answer like one question from somebody that helps them out and helps them get a job, I am very pleased with that.
That's awesome. And it's so incredible, you know, the power of making a difference, I think, and that's really what this whole thing is about. How about you, John?
Yeah, a pretty similar kind of experience. I started off in doing like music stuff. I studied music, and I was like a live musician, and then I got into composition, and then I wanted to do games, and then it kind of like naturally led to I didn't really want to do sound design, but it was kind of like a thing that I realized that I needed to do to get into games, and then realized that actually like I started like finding a love for it. And at that time, I found it quite hard to. I felt like there was a lot of competition, mainly because, like, where we were in Guildford, there were so many audio people coming out of like Surrey University and ACM and UCA Farnham that everyone wanted to do predominantly music. So I started going into like going to game jams and then seeing that like there were programmers who weren't doing my audio justice. So then I started learning how to program and then all of this stuff. But I felt quite isolated and quite alone. And so I started reaching out to people. There were some people around the area who were kind of willing to help, but I found it very hard kind of getting through to anyone, mainly because people are busy. This is the thing, is like people who are in the industry, they're really flipping busy. And there is only like a select few people who actually have the time to even like answer half of their emails. So I did end up meeting a few people just through reaching out to them. Loic Couthier, who's doing an AMA at some point, he helped me out when I was doing my first game, just kind of being like, this is kind of how you make a game in audio. And that really helped me. So we had to chat for an hour. I chatted with a guy, Rob something. He used to, I think he works at Creative Assembly. I don't know where he works now. And then a couple of other people. But the point is, like, I never really had like what you would consider a mentor who sort of like does like monthly calls with you or anything like that. I kind of just had to like ask and get a little bit at a time. So that was sort of my mentoring experience. So the reason that I got into mentoring myself was that like I kind of wanted to give back what I didn't have or what I didn't really feel like, what I felt like I wanted, essentially. So a lot of my mentorships are less sort of like short form mentorships, and I tend to mentor like a handful of people at a given moment, but it's very much like a couple of years sort of thing. Or like some mentors that I have, mentees that I have at the moment are the sort of people who we're going to be friends for our entire careers. And I'm there whenever they need me to sort of like answer questions. But funny enough, it works both ways, as you said, Greg, because, you know, like sometimes these people end up like bringing new ideas to you. So it's very much a two-way street in terms of mentorships. I don't think it's very much just like you have a teacher who tells you how it is and that's it. So I think, again, there are no rules. Everything's different. Everyone's different. You kind of just need to find what's right for you. So yeah, that's me.
Love it, and definitely agree with that. There are no rules, indeed. Well, so let's get a little bit into kind of what makes a good mentor, or some of the kind of things you think that make a good mentor. Presley, I would love to start off with you this time.
Yeah, sure. I think what makes a good mentor is somebody who's you know, not only just passionate and experienced about what they're talking about, but also somebody who seriously has a passion for just asking and answering whatever questions that come up, having the openness of, you know, maybe even changing the way that you're speaking to somebody or the method of communication or, you know, things like that. And being really open to, like, kind of restructuring a little bit how you're mentoring somebody as well. Like, I've had some people come in that want almost homework in a way, that have wanted, you know, like this, I want to learn this. How do I learn this? Can you give me an assignment, quote unquote, right? But other people are just like, I just want to have your email available to ask you questions whenever I want. And that's okay too, right? It's just sort of being fluid in the way that you're okay with communicating with people, and also just kind of laying those boundaries out, making sure that you have like that kind of reputation. And then on top of that, just the understanding that everybody's coming from different backgrounds and everyone has a different level of knowledge coming into it. You know, again, some people might have went through like WISE 101 or one of the courses and have an extensive like kind of vocabulary already, and other folks might have none and just know they want to get a sound in a game, but they don't know any of the words associated with that too. So just being able to change your approach depending on who's talking to you and what their background is, and being communicative with that, and just asking questions and trying to figure out exactly where they're coming from. If you don't know, their experience, or if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't just assume that this is what they want from something too. So all of my emails for mentorships and stuff like that starts with just like, what's your experience now? What do you want to get out of this? And, you know, what level of structure do you want from this experience? And then just kind of like tailoring the email communication or the video communication from there. I think that's kind of the most critical thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, definitely a huge touch point that everyone has different needs and wants, and you have to really be a good communicator and learn that as well. What do you think, Lewis? Anything to add on that?
Yes, I totally agree with everything Presley said. Totally agree with all of that. I think we've said it so many times this conference, but be friendly is the number one tip. No one's going to get anything out of it if you're just really mean, but also just like really encouraging as well. It always helps. Another quick tip as well before I get into my main point, giving good feedback is another great one. We had loads of people talk about feedback on Aircon, for example. We had a talk about giving feedback by Ashton Mills last week, which you can watch now for free. Getting distracted. Anyway, one thing I wanted to mention was I've never had a mentor personally, so I guess I don't really know what it's like to be in the video call with someone you've never met before or only half met or something, going and chatting to them. But I personally, if it was me, I'd be pretty kind of scared. I'd be really nervous about like wasting their time or annoying them or like, bombarding them with questions. I would be really panicky if it was me personally. And so this is just something that I try to do with people, is I always try to let them know as early as possible. Like, first thing I do before I go into anything is just like, I promise you cannot annoy me with any questions. Like, I don't want you to feel like, I'm like this big, in my ivory tower looking down on everyone, answering only questions I deem worthwhile. Like, there's no question like, too stupid. There's never too many questions, which for me, there isn't. If you're in a different position, if you only want to answer some questions, it's different. But like, I want to make sure people feel kind of comfortable, and and I like to think that the people I chat to regularly can feel like they can chat to me about anything. If they can't, I'm really sorry. You can, I promise. But yeah, I just think being really friendly and letting them know that like it's okay, it's a comfortable area. I'm happy to help in any way I can. It doesn't matter if it's if it's like a million emails every second. I mean, maybe a million is excessive, but you know what I mean. I've just seen someone in the comments to say I'm going to get 10 million emails in my inbox tomorrow, and maybe I will. And I promise you, it's not going to annoy me. I'm going to be flattered. I might not be able to get through 10 million emails, but I'm going to love reading as many as I can. That's my main point. Is just like, being friendly and letting them know it's a safe space. It's not like you're not going to be judged for anything. I really want to help. I want to be there and chat to people. And what about you, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, there's very little left for me to say. I mean, between you and Presley, you've pretty much summed it all up. But just to tie a neat little bow on it, I think the boundaries thing that Presley said is probably one of my biggest ones, where it's like, you know, obviously we're professionals taking time out of our days and stuff like that. So having this sort of mutual respect is really important. I think also, you know, like there was a conversation that we had on Airwiggles recently. Sam Hughes mentioned this about like people reaching out via emails. And I think it's just like, you know, if you're reaching out to a mentor, remember that it's like you're asking something from someone, and a lot of the time people are very like happy to help and stuff like that. But I think it's okay for people to say no because people are busy. You can't get annoyed about that, and I think that likewise a mentor kind of has to understand where like someone asking for a mentorship has to come from, where they're coming from. And so I think, you know, someone who's able to sort of like navigate that space and set healthy boundaries and sort of like not erupt when something doesn't go to plan or something like that. Or, you know, if you've got someone who's like constantly bailing and sort of, you know, wasting your time and stuff like that, I think it's just good to know when things are going well and when things are going not so well, and how to sort of navigate that space. But I'm a big believer in the mutual respect thing, and asking questions and being open to that. A lot of my mentorships, ironically, don't have anything to do with like sound a lot of the time. Like, you know, I'm sort of like doing sound mentorships, but it's funny because someone will come to me and they're just like, I want to get into game audio, but also I'm having existential crises like every day. I'm like, cool, let's talk about that. I'm not trained therapist or anything, but like I suffered from a lot of those anxieties, so we can sort of talk about that. And I think that also at the same time, it's something that I've experienced is that like when someone isn't really working for me, like I realize that I'm not the right mentor for this person. I'm very like, I'll take a lot of time to be like, actually, you know what, like I'm not the right mentor for you. This is a person. I've sent people on to you, Lewis, and Greg. Like I've been like, chat to these people because I know that they're going to be exactly what you need, but I'm not that. So yeah. But then basically everything that Presley and Lewis said.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely really important to also be able to set those boundaries for yourself and know when you can't give that time to someone. And I think that's also better than to refer them to someone else rather than to kind of like do half a job, if that makes sense. I love that you mentioned that. And then to twist it on its head. Oh, sorry, Lewis, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly add to John's last point, which is something I forgot to mention, which is I really recommend everyone here that's even got like a couple years of experience under their belts, like become a mentor and give it a go if it's something that interests you. But like what was worrying me or when I was kind of like debating it was like, I feel like I don't know everything. There's so much stuff I don't know. And I was always kind of scared that someone would spend all this time reaching out to me, whatever, they'd be matching me on Limit Break something. I'd be like, well, I can't answer any of the questions. But like, as John said, like it's totally okay to not know everything and even just know like some really specific things. And even if like someone's asking you for help about stuff you have like know nothing about, you can just like point them in the right direction to something that you can probably do better than they can. And that in itself, even though you're doing very little work, like it's going to be so helpful for people. And so I wouldn't let like not knowing everything stop you. Just be honest. You don't have to fake knowing everything. Just be like, well, if you ask me a question about multi-band compression, I don't know, but this person might. So yeah, just don't worry about knowing everything. You don't need to. Sorry,
huge
back
point.
to you.
Huge point for sure. Well, let's twist it on its head. What makes a good mentee? What you start this time, John?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the big things is asking questions, and also likewise, just to what Lewis said, is that as a mentee, be honest with what you know and what you don't know. Like, don't try to bullshit your mentor into being like, oh yeah, I know that, whatever. You don't need to tell me that. Like, listen, ask questions, and sort of be open to the experience. Like, yeah, you'll always be surprised at like the sort of stuff that you can learn and absorb when you least expect it. So yeah, but I also think that there's a lot to be said about like put in the work. if you've got a mentor, it's chances are that they're like, you know, they're taking time out of their free time, you know, the rest of the day that they could be with their family or whatever. They're doing it because they love it, but also the best mentees are the ones who are like, hey, I've come with all of this work, like check this out, and like they give you something and you go running with it, like that you really just take it to the next level. And funny enough, I've seen a lot of people on Airwiggles, just like, you know, from when Airwiggles was first founded, even mentorships, in the sense that people go, here's my portfolio, or, you know, here's my show reel. And then a bunch of people will sort of like feed back on it, or they'll be like in the reel reviews and stuff. And then they'll go away and they'll come back with a second version, and they'll be like, here's version 2, do the same again. And they'll like really roll with it. I think that they are the best kind of mentees, are the ones who are just like, they're 110% into the experience. So how about you, Presley?
I swear that mute button does not like coming undone for me. Yeah, same. I agree. For me, like, my favorite people that come to me are like, hey, I want to get into this. I think I know what I'm doing wrong. I want advice on this. Can you help me with these things? And I can be like, yes, I can help you with 4 out of 6. And these other 2, try this person, or like try this avenue, because I'm not as experienced. Like, I haven't done a lot of freelancing. I don't know freelance stuff at all, really. So whenever somebody comes to me like, I want to be a freelancer, I'm like, that's great. I can help you with your sound design feedback. I don't have the experience necessary to tutor you in this other thing. Here's other places to look for more mentors or more information. But the best ones that come to me are the ones that just like, they know what they want out of it, and they have questions, and they want to keep asking questions. And every, you know, couple of days you get a new email that's like, hey, I have these more questions to throw at you about these things. Can you elaborate on these different points? Like, it's inspiring to me too, you know, to see what people are like really excited about in the industry and stuff like that. And occasionally I'll get a question about either a sound design technique or something that I didn't really like consciously think about a lot. And that also gives me the opportunity to be like, oh, right, I know I say this a lot, but I don't really explain it. How can I explain this better? And then I learn more about my own processes from it as well. You know, so just the questions and the openness to feedback, I think, are really the keys to being a good mentee. And then on top of that, also just like realizing that it is a very creative industry, which means everybody's going to have a different way of doing something. And everyone's going to have different solutions to the same problem a lot of the time. And you may get different feedback from different people that contradicts each other. So also just sort of like going into a mentorship as a mentee with the knowledge that like somebody might say something that directly contradicts something else you heard. And then it's kind of up to you to find the happy medium, or the way that makes the most sense to you, and then implementing that into your own stuff. Because you're never going to get the same answers twice in an industry like this, unless it's like, how do wise random container? You know? So yeah, what about you, Lewis?
Yeah, I totally agree with both of your points. You kind of took everything I was going to say out my mouth. Just to clarify though, like one thing I really appreciate when my mentees do is, obviously I always tell them, you can't ever annoy me, ask if you need anything. For me personally, like unlike probably you, John, like all the people I mentor, I kind of have quite a lot. I'm kind of quantity over quality, I suppose. Like I kind of do a lot of kind of like initial calls with people, and then they can go off their own way, and I'll always be there to help, etc. But to be honest, it's too much for me to keep track of. Like I can't really trust myself to reach out to everybody every month or something and constantly kind of be like, hey, you want to check in next? I do mention this to people, but like, if you need anything from me, like cool, like reach out to me any point, and sort of start organizing, you know, a call or something, because I'm always going to be happy to. But like I fail, I do try, but I fail at actually kind of like keeping up those relationships, like from my point of view anyway. So like, again, just asking when you need something. Like everyone, if they've signed up to be a mentor or something, they're happy to help. Like that much is proven. So yeah, I know it's obviously really anxious kind of saying to people like, oh, can you do another call with me? But reaching out to people and like showing initiative really is a great way to start. And the other thing I was going to say, yeah, like you said, John, with people kind of doing the feedback you give them like quickly, I'm never gonna like care if you can't do something quick enough. Like, it doesn't really affect me in any way. I'm not like a teacher. I get nothing out of you, doing things or don't doing things. But if you're really determined and you're really working hard, like, you kind of have to be to get into game audio. I remember I had one mentee ages ago, and we did a call just going over like some website stuff. And then I kind of like maybe 2 hours later, I was like, oh, let me just check again. Maybe there's something I missed. And by the time I checked the website again, it's already been completely updated with everything I've suggested. It's like, well, that's amazing. That person has just shown super determination. They've like done a call, they immediately put it into action. And I appreciate everyone can't do that. But like that kind of thing just makes me feel like, yeah, it shows you that they really are into it. They really want it. It just makes you feel good about yourself, and it makes it easy to then you can immediately move on to the next thing and go on to the new stuff to learn, rather than kind of constantly having to repeat yourself and doing the same things over and over again. And I get that it's not easy for everyone, and some people can't do things. Like, I'm not having a go at anyone that can't, but if basically just put in as much as you can, basically within reason. That makes it easy as well, because you can just like move a little faster, you learn quicker, and you can move on to new exciting things rather than having to kind of like delay. Sorry to keep going. I also kind of find like all the kind of like mentorship things, like for Limit Break, for instance, which is kind of like a 6 month, one call a month mentorship call. Like, it's great having a call every month and keeping it going for a bit. But for me personally, like, I find the first kind of like 3 or 4 calls I do with someone, you can do within the first week. Like, it doesn't really benefit anyone to spread them out so long, because like there's a lot of stuff you can get in quite quickly before you start getting into the longer term nitty gritty stuff. And so I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, just like doing things quickly, like you don't have to wait. Basically, you can, if you can get to work straight away and be insistent and determined, I think you can have a better time than if you're taking your time and taking it slow. I'm really getting distracted. Greg, what's the next question?
Yeah, I think that leads us perfectly into approach as well, like how we approach mentoring as mentors. And I think everyone has a different one. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the different approaches everyone has and kind of what they've learned from it. We'll start with you again, Presley, if that's right.
Yeah. Approaches. Let's see. Like I said, like the first thing I do is if somebody comes to me and like, I want to get into game audio, how do I do it? The first thing I'll ask is like, what's your experience level so far? Do you know what area of the industry you want to get into? What do you want to get out of mentorship? And what kind of communication do you want? Like I'll start the annoying questions, quote unquote, heavy quotes. You can't annoy me with questions. I'll start that on my end and be like, here's like 10 questions for you before we go anywhere. So I know where somebody's coming from. Like, do you have a post-secondary education, or are you going to be graduating soon? Like, what's the deal here? And kind of like going from there. And then I try to let it be an organic thing. I know I don't have a ton of time more often than not. So I'll just say, like, if you want to schedule a video call, we can. If not, if you're cool with emails, then you can literally email me at any hour of the day and I will get to it when I can. It's all good. Just any questions that are available, I'm here for. So I really try to leave it open. I try to leave it so that, like, if folks, sorry, the cat gif, this is really funny. Yeah, I try to leave it pretty open-ended, I guess is the best way to put it in terms of like where it goes. And then if somebody asks for like, I'll kind of communicate it at the beginning, like if you want specific ideas or approaches or like homework, I'll, ask me for it and I will provide, but it's not something that I'll do automatically. It's like, I'm here to answer your questions and then elaborate further if you want. But I tend to try to leave it up to the mentee in terms of exactly what they want to get out of the experience. Yeah, John, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, like I said before, every like mentorship is quite different, and the key is asking questions like, what does someone want? A lot of the time, especially if someone's like quite fresh in terms of like they don't really know how the industry works, or they don't really know what they need to be learning. So because they don't know what they don't know, then they're kind of like, I don't really know what the right questions are. So sometimes I find that like asking them questions in sort of like leading questions and sort of like, well, is it technical sound design that you want to do? Or do you have an interest in like learning a bit of programming? Or do you have an interest in only creating assets and stuff like that? And sometimes they're like, you know, sometimes people will be quite like, I don't really know. And in which case I'll probably be like, all right, well, here's like a little taster of this, and here's a taster of this. Like, see what you find that you like, or like watch a bunch of videos, or maybe go away and chat to this person and then come back to me, and then we'll talk a little bit further about like where to go in that direction, like in the direction that you end up choosing. So as you said, Presley, like asking questions is kind of like the key to finding out like where to sort of like focus your efforts and stuff. But also I do also find that like if you like everything, Miguel, then you should watch my talk on generalism. Yeah, but it's just one of those things you just kind of have to like see where to go. But if something's not working, as in you suddenly realize that someone's just not really running with something, then there's also a time that I kind of ask, like, you know, are you not enjoying this? Or you know, should we maybe look at something else so that you're not getting so anxious about stuff? Man, the more I talk about it, the more my mentorships are like therapy. So
hey, if you ever need to switch fields.
in a previous life, I was either a chef or a therapist. But yeah, it's just something that
generalist.
Yeah, there we go.
Generalist of life.
Sorry, I totally.
No, it's fine. But it's true. It's like I think that I don't really have a lot of mentees where it's like the very short form stuff. I'm kind of like the yang of Lewis's yin, like where, you know, like if people are just sort of like asking generalist questions, I'm super happy to answer, but it's very seldom that it ends there. It very much turns in. And also, here are all of these other questions, and or also let's have like a 2-hour call once a month or something like that, and we'll like really dig deep and stuff and do. You know, I tend to believe that, like, obviously, if we're only doing like a call once a month, or maybe like there's a month where we do 3 or 4 calls, and then there's like 2 months where we don't do one, then I kind of tailor it. But I think that, like we said before, if like a mentor assigns you a bunch of work, then it's kind of expected that you're going to go off and do that work. There's seldom a lot of like point in coming back and doing like another hour-long call if we're just going to rehash the same stuff again. But again, to sort of like sum that up, is that I just think, like, again, take it, make a sort of like what do you call it, like a syllabus of the sort of stuff that you want to cover and the goals that you want to achieve, but also sort of like creating milestones and just being like, oh, maybe by this date you want to have like a show reel ready, and then by this date then you want to like be applying for jobs, and then by this date that's kind of like the end goal of where you're going to be like hopefully getting a job or doing audio tests and stuff like that. So that tends to be my approach. And then once they have a job, then it's kind of there for like support for like insecurities or anxieties or questions, like generalist questions and stuff. So yeah. How about you, Lewis?
I'm just sorry. I'm
sorry. Go, Greg.
Budge in here. Just because I'm the moderator and the timekeeper, and I just want to move on to the next one. And Lewis, you can totally start off with that. I'm so sorry. But you know where to find Lewis, and you can ask him all the million questions. So
please do.
In terms of like actually getting a mentorship, Lewis, how would you recommend someone who has no idea how to get a mentorship to actually, in terms of approach, in terms of where to look, where to find people? What's your best advice on that?
Well, it's almost like we planned this question, Greg, because the best place to get an audio mentorship is gameaudiolearning.com. How many times have we said that this conference? If you don't already know, there's a little tab on gameaudiolearning.com called Mentorships, where loads of people have volunteered to become mentors. You can just scroll through them all, reach out to whoever you like, ask some people. It's a great resource. And I had nothing to do with it. Like it was all Greg. So congrats to Greg. It was really, really great. But there's lots of mentorship programs around. I think, that one's probably the best. But there's like, if you're there's a great one in the UK I keep talking about. If you're not a straight white male, there's Limit Break in the UK, which is awesome. really, really, really good. It runs for 6 months, long-term mentorships, run by some amazing people doing some really amazing things. But like I said, there's other mentorship programs around, like there's the Story Singer and Co mentorship program runs sometimes. Into Games has a mentorship program similar to Limit Break, but I'm pretty sure it's something to everyone. Those might be UK specific. I'm not actually sure, but like, there's lots of ones around. If you just do a little search on Twitter or on Game Body Learning or something, I'm sure you'll find some more mentorship programs. And in fact, I know for a fact there's some are missing because there's so many. But also within reason, like if there's someone you kind of like know or like really inspired by, I'm not saying just to ask them for a mentorship straight away, but like if there's someone you're particularly really inspired by, feel free to reach out and just ask them a couple questions to start, maybe flirt the idea of maybe doing a video call to chat, but like at that stage, like they haven't volunteered their time, so they're well within their rights to be like, no, or just not respond to you. But again, people are pretty friendly. And as Greg mentioned in his talk earlier, if you don't ask, you don't really receive. Not so much with jobs, but if you don't really receive jobs anyway. But if you don't, it's always good to reach out to people who you're inspired by. Anyway, that's how I'd answer that question.
And yes, thanks for also putting that in the chat. Also, Game Audio Diversity Alliance as a School of Video Game Audio just put in, so that's also a great one. Presley, do you have any other to add? Obviously, you run the Sound Design Discord, which is, I guess, also for more casual mentorships and stuff like that. A great place to start.
Yeah, the Sound Design Discord is the main place for me. I can link that in the chat in a moment here too. But sort of like what Lewis said. If somebody has their contact information online or has like their Twitter DMs open or whatever it is, don't be afraid to just ask. If they don't have the time or if they don't have the capability or the capacity for it, then they'll let you know that too. As long as you message people with respect and understanding that, it might not lead to anything major, just go for it. And see what happens. Like a lot of people in this industry are incredible humans and want to help if they can. So go for it. I would say probably your best bet is going to places where they are openly accepting mentors, like the Game Audio Mentorships tab on Game Audio Learning or the Diversity Alliance or all that kind of stuff too. I think that's the best place to go. But if you have someone whose work is just astounding to you and really inspiring to you, and they have some sort of contact open online, respectfully message and see if they're down to chat, and if not, that's okay too. But it doesn't hurt to try. Don't like go through weird amounts of searching to find people's contact information if it's not readily available. That's a little awkward, but if they have an open line of communication, ask the question, see what happens.
Definitely agree on that. John, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, they've pretty much summed it up. The only thing I'd say is, in terms of the reaching out to people, I think I personally, just as anecdotally, I get a little bit put off if someone's just like, hey, I love your stuff. Will you mentor me? And I'm kind of just like, it's a little bit too soon. I haven't really got a gauge of like what you're like. Usually the way that I would personally want to start sort of like a mentoring thing is that first, I think, as Presley said, like ask questions first, like kind of like warm people up to the fact that you're like a nice person, that you're keen and all that sort of stuff. Then potentially go like, oh, hey, actually, is there a chance that you're available for like maybe like half an hour or like an hour long call to just like go over some questions? And if you do get to that point, then have a list of questions ready. Don't just like wing it. Like be there, be prepared to sort of make the most of your time with that person, and also be respectful. Like I definitely did this when I was like starting out in my career, was that I was sort of like ready to just chat the whole night, and then they were like, I've got dinner on the table and my wife's calling me, so I'm going to go now. Be prepared for it to be either half an hour to an hour. Maybe bet on it being half an hour, and then like if it gets to an hour, then be the person who's just like, all right, it's about an hour. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to head off now. And then you can always ask them, if it goes really well, you can ask them again, like being like, oh, hey, have you got maybe a little bit more time to chat about some other stuff? And then rinse and repeat. And if it becomes like a thing where it's like, oh, you're really vibing, then be like, would you be down for doing something a little bit more like formal? This is what I would suggest with people who aren't necessarily on like the Game Audio Learning portal and stuff, as sort of like they're down for mentorships. The people who are down for mentorships, I think it's totally valid to be like, hey, I'm starting out in the industry and I have no idea, or I've been working in the industry for 5 years, but I still feel massive imposter syndrome. Would you be down for talking? And then chances are, if they're there, they're ultra down. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, love that. And amazing, Presley. Thank you for putting that in the chat as well. A little bit of a template. I think the big thing is as John and Presley and also Lewis, everyone basically said is be specific about what you're looking for and what you want, because then people can help out. It can be a lot if it's just like you get a hey kind of about I don't know where to start or whatever it's, and so the more specific the better. But obviously if you don't know what you want, then it's hard, and it's also we're here to help. We're like a coach, you know, to get you to your goals basically. And yeah, in terms of in that case, again, flipping it around, if you want to be a mentor, what's the best strategy to approach that? Lewis, you can hit that off again for us.
Yeah, well, just as the script suggested, go to gameaudialearning.com/mentorship. I don't know if you know, I believe there's a sign up form. You can sign up to be a mentor. Is that right, Greg?
I love the script. Who wrote it? Yeah, indeed. There is indeed a button, become a mentor. So
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so that's a great one I recommend. But also, yeah, like as all the kind of mentorship programs, like the official mentorship programs I recommended, they all kind of like have like opening periods, like either year round or like certain months of the year. Just like follow them on Twitter, or just like keep an eye out when they get open, and you can sign up whenever you need. But also one thing you can do, which is what I've seen a few people do, and you know I do as well, like put like in your Twitter bio, or then make a tweet or make a post on Airwiggles being like, I'm free to mentor, like, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people. You know, anyone want to reach out, give me a message and I'll pick some people. Put it in your Twitter bio, put it on your website, just being like, I offer audio mentorships, ask me any question you like. You know, you don't have to be going through an organization. I guess it probably might help. You might be able to, I don't know, really, it's up to you. You can do whatever you like, do both. But yeah, nothing's really stopping you. You can just say, I'm going to do a mentorship. Who wants in? And you'll probably find people come to you, as I'm sure we're all about to find out when we check our emails tomorrow morning. But yeah, just go for it. You don't have to. There's not really an entry requirement for it, really. Some programs do have entry requirements, but apart from that, like, yeah, just say I want to do it, or go into those forms like we suggested.
Fantastic stuff. Presley, do you have anything to add onto that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, you know, especially considering how we find each other, like a lot of it is social media presence, like Lewis was saying, like post on Twitter. And it doesn't even have to be a specifically like, if you want me to be your mentor, message me here. Just say like, my DMs are open. If you have a question about a thing I've done, let me know and I'm here. You know, just kind of being open to that and being communicative to say like, yeah, I'm like, my lines of communication are open. They are available. Go ahead. You know, I think that's kind of all it takes, really. Just be open to that. Be open to, you know, any questions that might come from that. But any kind of social media posts that you can make that just say like, hey, I'm available, or even just going into like the sound design Discord or the game audio learning Discord or something, and just saying, you know, answering questions that people are posting publicly is another good way of getting sort of your name out there in terms of like, oh, this person wants to help. They're answering questions all the time on Discord or wherever, or like the Airwiggles feedback posts and stuff like that. If they're okay with it doing it publicly, then maybe I can ask them a question, you know, in a DM or something if I have something more specific. But the more that you show online that you're willing to help people and willing to answer these questions, the more people will come to you with it. Yeah.
Absolutely love that. John, if you have anything to add to that, then do that. But also, I would love to kind of finish this all off with some of the biggest takeaways you've had from being a mentor yourself and what you've learned along the journey. But yeah, go ahead and answer the previous one as well if you've got any other tips for how to get that.
I have nothing to add to the other one. President Lewis summed it up perfectly. So,
nice.
Sorry, what was the question again? Oh, the other question?
Yeah, what have your takeaways been from being a mentor? What are the biggest things you've learned personally during that time?
Oh man, that's kind of hard. It's hard to do what we do. I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. I kind of sort of, when I was starting in the industry, I very much had my sort of like blinders on, and I was like so like hyper focused on the goal that I didn't really kind of appreciate like how much work I was actually putting in, because I was like working not in the industry, obviously, like I was working running a burrito shop and stuff, and spending all of my evenings doing like audio related things and going to all of the game jams and all of the like game dev drinks, and just like burning my candle from both ends, essentially. So I think one of the big things that I realized through mentoring is that like seeing people do this, I'm like, oh shit, actually, that's pretty messed up. So I kind of like, I talk a lot with my mentees about just being like, burnout is a thing. Be aware of the signs of it, because it's all very well you trying to sort of like, you know, make your way in the world and do all of this stuff. But like, if you get into the industry and you're already burnt out, like, you know, you kind of want to come in with like full of energy and like not be cynical before you've even started. So yeah, so that's one of the big things that I took away from all of it. Also, the fact that people are really nice and that you can learn a lot from teaching. I mean, there's a reason that they say the best way to learn is to teach. So I think that doing mentorships, like, yeah, I see you, Helly. Yeah, but you're kicking butt. Like, you're doing great. Yeah, I think that there's so much to gain from being a mentor, as much as there is to gain from being a mentee or having someone mentor you. I keep on iterating that to my mentees, and they're just like, "Oh my god, thank you so much for doing this! Like you're you know, like you're a godsend, and you're really helping me and stuff." And it's like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't do this like altruistically and that I don't want to help people, but like genuinely, there is something that I get out of this as well. Even if it's just the fact that like I love helping people and I love like giving back and all of that sort of stuff. But also like I do learn. I am sort of moving towards like I'm pushing my career into the direction of leading. So like having mentees is actually really beneficial to me to sort of like gain those skills to be able to like help a team grow and sort of nurture a healthy team and stuff like that. So it's not the sole reason that I'm doing it, but it's a byproduct that I really enjoy out of it. So yeah, all of these things. I'll stop waffling now.
Love it.
Lewis, how about you?
Sorry, we've got a question actually, so we're just gonna do a quick couple of questions to finish this whole thing off, because I'm aware it's pretty late, and also Presley has work, so we have sleep. Scott asked, "What's the biggest challenge you found helping music composers jump the tracks from, into a sound designer mindset?" So this is quite an interesting one. So composers to sound designer mindset. Who wants to take this one? Any volunteers? Yeah, go on, John.
Sorry to hog the microphone.
That's all good.
The biggest challenge is not marketing yourself as a composer. I think it's very common for people to go like, hey, here's my show reel, and it's like all music composition. I'd say if you're serious about getting into sound design, ditch all of the music. Like if I'm hiring at the moment and I don't want to see any music on there unless it's like a small thing at the end. I know that's like really harsh, but it's like, I will look at portfolios that have redesigns, like entirely redesigns on there. I will look at portfolios where it's like technical sound design stuff. But as soon as there's a portfolio where 90% of it is like composition stuff, I'm out. Like, or if you hand me a portfolio and it's like only SoundCloud, like there are just so many other people like absolutely smashing it out of the park that people just aren't going to consider you. So I think like take the time to develop your portfolio, even if you have like a separate portfolio for like music composition stuff, separate them, like completely separate them. And it's watch my generalist talk because I talk about this, but like your like the fact that you have composer skills as a sound designer, they're really valuable, but they're not a unique selling point for like a sound design role. And I'll draw the line under it there.
Epic. Then next question from Maximus Kim. Question out of fun curiosity. Usually, how formal are your communications with mentees? Do they change formality over time? Presley, go for it.
I kind of leave it up to how the mentor originally contacts me for the most part. If their communication is super formal, I will be super formal. But I do find like the longer that I chat with people, they tend to also get more casual as things go on. So I'll do the same. Or, you know, like I've had a couple of times where I've spoken to people online prior to the mentorship. And if I have a good enough relationship with that person online, then I'll certainly drop some of the formality. If I know that they know me, I know them, we're kind of in the same, you know, we get each other, then I tend to drop some of the formality as well. But I kind of leave it up to the mentee, I should say. And if you're like, oh, you want to be like super formal about it, then I'll be super formal about it. But otherwise, we can like shoot the shit, just have some fun. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm all for informal personally. Cool. Then question from Oscar. Do you have people reach out to you without actually wanting a mentor? Is this also okay? Forgive me, the possibly silly question and skepticism, but coming from the film and TV industries, this is almost too good. Nothing like this really exists in that world. People never want to be contacted. This community seems really special. Lewis, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm assuming you just mean like if you have any specific questions or just like one-off questions or bits of feedback, it's totally fine. Like I get loads of people messaging me just like a single question, like, oh, can you check this out? Oh, where's this thing you mentioned? Oh, what's blah 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 blah. Like it's all absolutely fine. Obviously, some people might not respond, but I think you're right. The game audio community is quite special in that people are keen to answer that kind of thing. And so it's not a silly question at all. I'm aware it's kind of like, I think mentorship's kind of grown a bit in the last maybe like 5-10 years. So it really is kind of like everyone's kind of doing it. Everyone's really into it. Loads of people I know are mentors. I think, yeah, people are really happy to help in any aspect. And yeah, in some cases, just answering 1 or 2 questions quickly is more convenient for us. So, you know, that's absolutely welcome. I always just tell people if you have a question, like so many people are happy to help you answer it, whether you need to know them really well or you're in a mentorship program or just someone you're inspired by. Just be polite, and I think, you know, nothing can go wrong. The worst will happen will be no one responds to you and they probably just are too busy to see it.
I want to add to that as well. This doesn't just kind of like count for juniors as well. Like I asked my friends and colleagues in game audio who are more experienced and also sometimes less experienced, just they have more knowledge in a certain place than I do. And I say, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, do you know you've recorded some dry ice before? I don't know where to even start. What are some tips or whatever? So I think, you know, this is really one of the best things about this industry. You can reach out to anyone at any point all the time, and everyone's really nice. Cool. I think there's one last question from Sam. It's pretty funny that's come up. I even put not a composer. Oh, it's not a question. I even put not a composer in my bio because it seems like that's actually the standout factor for a junior. That's fun. That's quite funny. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to not be a composer. There's so many composers.
I wouldn't necessarily like say I'm definitely not a composer, because there are like benefits to
For
like
sure.
having like music theory knowledge and stuff like that. But like, but yeah, but definitely don't just be like I'm a composer applying for like a not a composer job, you know.
Awesome. Okay, there's actually one last question. We'll do one last question and then we'll end there from Prashant. Do you have any suggestions on how you nudge the people you're mentoring to follow through the action items? Sometimes there is a tendency new learners to jump the gun and want to become good immediately. That's an interesting one. Yeah,
I don't mind.
I think we can all, maybe 3 or all 3 can. Lewis, start off.
When I chat to someone that kind of has this, they kind of, you know, there's a lot to go through, but they want to kind of dive into it straight away. Normally it involves kind of focusing on Foley and ambiances, which is other 2 I always encourage people to take time on. But I normally, in this case, I'll say if we have like a task or a challenge, which is like make a redesign or something, I'll make them go through it like one step at a time. If they're into this, if I won't make them do anything they don't want to do, but if they want to, you know, go through the way I'm kind of suggesting, it's kind of like, here's a redesign we're going to do. We're going to start with just ambience, and you're going to do just ambiances, and you send it to me when you're done, and that's it. Nothing else is going to be looked at. And then after that, we're going to do Foley, and then after that, we're going to do, you know, sound effects, and go through really methodically, step by step, to make sure that like no step is being skipped No step is being skipped, is what I meant to say. So that's how I do it personally, just kind of like going through one at a time and like not even telling them to actively don't send me anything which isn't this specific thing. But for the most part, like I don't really get that very often. Anyone else?
Presley.
Yeah, sure. I try to just okay. I don't really go into that much detail a lot of the time unless I really need to. Generally speaking, if somebody comes to me with like, here's what I've done with my sound design, what do you think about it so far? What can I, what kind of feedback can I get on this show reel? I'll try to frame my feedback in a way that asks a question. So, like the big thing that I learned in school and the big thing that I try to teach other people because it was so helpful to me is like, well, there's two of them. One is you're telling a story. Every single thing you make is a story, all of it. Every little sound is its own story. And trying to nudge people towards that idea, I find is a really, it benefits a lot of people from what I've seen. Just like, what do you think is actually happening on the back end? Like, not just what you're visually seeing. Yeah, you're seeing a gunshot. What is happening within that gun, that sci-fi gun, whatever it is, what else around it, like list it. Have an Excel sheet of like 10 different things that's happening in this one gunshot and start thinking about it that way. And that tends to help people a lot, is just sort of like nudging them towards the idea of like breaking things down even farther. Usually gets people a lot of the way there when it comes to like the sound design feedback and actually kind of reaching all the little steps in between to making something really cool. The other thing I do is I try to just like give them feedback that emphasizes really specific ideas. One that happens a lot, especially in the sound design Discord, but in general that I find is like, go big, like make things way bigger than you possibly ever think they need to be. And you're probably going to hit exactly where it needs to be. So yeah, I guess like in terms of nudging the people to follow through action items, it's like trying to be really specific with my feedback, but not just telling, like asking a question, I think is really the key and something that's helped me a lot. Like, hey, that's really cool. Have you thought about what it means for this to do a thing? And that tends to kind of get the cogs moving in the right way. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm ranting a bit. But basically posing feedback as a question that has to be answered seems to work well.
I absolutely love that. I mean, I've been recently at the start of the year started doing Muay Thai, and my coach does this all the time. He asks me questions throughout and gets me to think about it, and oftentimes I say the wrong thing, and then he's like, think again, and then I get to it, and then it's like, oh, I've come to the conclusion, and then therefore I know it, right? I'm not just being told, but I actually intrinsically know it. So I love that. Yeah, John, any last things to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, for everything everyone else has said, I'm also a big believer in that, like, teach someone how to, like, don't give someone a fish, teach them how to fish, that sort of thing. They'll eat for the rest of their lives. And yeah, like, again, because mentorships, at least the ones that I do, are like very casual. Like, I don't believe in sort of like there being repercussions for someone not doing the work. A lot of the time it's like, I'm working a day job, so I didn't have the time to do this thing. Like, then the next step of that is, as Lewis said, like, all right, let's break it up into sort of like bite-sized chunks. So you don't have to do like an entire piece in 1 week. It's sort of like, all right, well, just start with like the footsteps here, and then start with the sort of like ambiences, and then start like layer it up rather than looking at something like big and daunting and then you put it off. I think that's probably it, is sort of like also, as Presley says, sort of like kind of get them to work out the best way to do things, or sort of like get them to figure out the answer themselves rather than you just telling them how to do stuff. Because I mean, anyone can do that. And I know that some people do have like mentorships where they're just like, yeah, you just do this, this, and this. And some people need that. Like, that's all they need. But I think like in a sort of more like teaching someone how to fish mentality, it's sort of like, all right, well, what do you think should be done here? And then they'll try, and then they'll like, I think it's great. I encourage people to fail, because failing is how you learn. Like, if you just get to some form of like peak by not failing, then you've made it real, like you've had a real lucky time. And when you do inevitably fail, you're falling from higher. So like, it's going to hit you harder. So I think that like preparing people by teaching them that failure is like a positive thing is probably one of the best ways to sort of like help people realize that if they fail, they can still move forwards. I think I have a mentee at the moment who is quite worried to do the wrong thing or to like not do well. And I think that the boundary that we're trying to break at the moment is that it's not about doing one thing perfectly. It's about doing 1,000 things wrong until you get that sort of 1,001th. 1,001st. The bloody hell, it's late here. It's the 1,001th. I'm going to double down thing really well. So that's my 10 cents. Back to you, Greg.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a great place to stop, to be honest. Otherwise, we might have some even better numbers and whatnot. Thank you so much, you three, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And also thank you to everyone who asked great questions and who joined for this session. Yeah, it's really too late. The brain is starting to... It's been a real good time, and yeah, I hope you all had some takeaways from that. I definitely learned some really good new stuff, and yeah, just quick final words from everyone. Lewis,
thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. And my one final kind of thing I wanted to leave you all with is there's 40 people watching this right now, and I'm assuming you're all interested in mentorships in some form. I hope so anyway. If so, I don't really understand why you're here, but I'm hoping you're interested. And if you're interested in being a mentor, like, go for it. Honestly, it's really fun. I really enjoy it. I think we all do, I hope. It's so rewarding. You learn so much by teaching. Like, you make great friends. It's a really good time. Don't worry about like not knowing enough, whatever. Like, honestly, give it a go, see how you find it. And I think you'll find it worthwhile. And likewise, if you're a potential mentee, if you're kind of wanting to speak to someone, but you're kind of scared to reach out to people, you don't really know how, like, honestly, go through the links we provided earlier. Honestly, go for it. I really recommend it. I'd like to think it's beneficial to mentees. I suppose I've never been a mentee, so I don't know, but like, I would have thought it's going to be pretty helpful. Don't worry about upsetting people or annoying people. Like, just be polite. If you're polite, you can do anything. Like, nothing's going to go wrong. I really do recommend it. So if you're watching this, honestly, go for it. If you're not already involved in some kind of mentorship program and you'd like to be, like, there's nothing stopping you. I really recommend it.
Awesome. Presley, mic to you for last words and goodbyes.
Thanks for joining. This has been a lot of fun. Similar to what Lewis said, if you're interested in either side, being a mentee or a mentor, just go for it. There's nothing bad about it. It's all good stuff. The more people that you talk to, the more you learn about the industry and the more you learn about sound design, regardless of which side you're on, whether you're mentoring other people or being mentored by somebody. So just go for it. It's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding. It's really satisfying. Literally, like, you can't ask enough questions. Annoying me with questions is not a thing. It's just not a thing. So you can try if you want. It's not going to happen. So if you have a question, just go for it. It's all good.
Awesome. John?
Well, first off, thanks everyone for joining us. It's like, for the most part, it's either late or early, and we really appreciate you being here. Also, thanks to Lewis and Greg for setting this up. This is dope. It's like the best thing to happen to the game audio sphere. And so it's really cool. There's one point that I learned while I was at GDC from a talk, and I can't remember if I'm getting this right, so I might butcher it. But this guy was saying about mentoring in particular, or just generally in terms of like being in the industry or like learning anything. There's this method where you try to get 5 people in your sort of like career life, where one person who you look up to as a mentor, someone who you can learn from and, ask questions, someone who's like kind of got your back from a higher level. Get 3 people around you in your sphere who are at the same level as you, who you can sort of like help each other and learn each other because you're all sort of like in the same level. and you know, like learn from each other, not compete with each other like in a negative way, but sort of like egg each other on and like raise each other up together, and then get one person at least who's like lower, like in a sort of like earlier stage in their career to you, and do a sort of like mentorship sort of thing, whatever that means to you, whether it's like answering questions for them, you know, with consent and stuff like that, or take them on as a full mentee and stuff like that. And I think that it's never too early to take on a mentee. So that was a very interesting thing that resonated with me, and I would highly recommend it, because in hindsight, I kind of did that myself and it worked really well. Lewis and Greg in particular have been like really instrumental in sort of like helping me without mentoring me, if you get what I mean. So really, really handy stuff. And as Presley said, you know, ask questions, just ask people. The worst that they can say is no, or the worst that can happen is you're a dick, and then you're known as a dick to that person. But like, just be nice. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's me.
And it's
Love
free.
it.
I forgot to mention, mentorship is free. You don't pay for it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's all voluntary. Yeah.
cool. Thank you all for coming. Take care. Have a great evening, morning, day, whatever time it is, night, and see you tomorrow again. Same place, different times at AirCon.
what an ending phrase that was.
I'll end the stream now,
everyone.
and then it'll kick everyone out, and there'll be a countdown. So see you tomorrow. Bye.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.